You know, I see people sometimes will say to me something like, I'm a procrastinator and I need to stop. So I really need to stop procrastinating. They find it gets worse. And the reason why it gets worse is they've now labelled themselves as it.
Yeah.
I'm a procrastinator. So they're actually saying it and so becoming it even more. Why people perhaps don't necessarily take a leap of faith or commit to something which is outside of their comfort, I think it's probably because you're not guaranteed success.
If you could change one thing personally and professionally, what would it be?
Oh.
Hey everyone, today I am joined on the Proud Talk by Jamil Qureshi. Welcome.
Thank you, Tracy. Pleasure to be here.
So he's just got back from Paris and absolutely shattered. So thank you
for
taking the time. I appreciate that. So for those of you that don't know Jamil, you are a sports and actually you're a high performance psychologist and you work with people in sports, business. How about you actually give us a bit of an overview of what you do in high performance psychology?
Yes. So I always think psychology is psychology. So whether you're a sports person or whether you're a CEO, I think the principles are all the same.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think we're all human beings, and I think that you have people whose fears, insecurities, frailties, wants and desires are all the same, whether you play golf or whether you run a business. So I always just say I'm a performance coach and psychologist. I sort of fell into sport and I sort of fell into psychology, I guess. But I ended up working in sport in a roundabout way. My background is really business, and that's where I seem to spend most of my time now.
So where did psychology start for you then? When did you start going on that journey? And why business? Have you always been in the corporate world?
Yes. I got into psychology when I was playing cricket. So I used to be quite a good cricketer, believe it or not. I was all right. And then someone said to me that, look, you're a good cricketer, but you're dreadful when it comes to your mental strength. When it comes to mindset, you're poor. So
really?
Yeah. So
you had a poor mindset.
No, but I'll tell you what it was, Tracy. I was really easily distracted. I was a talented cricketer. I was really good at cricket, so I never put in any effort. So I never trained hard. I never worked hard. There was no discipline. So you'd be much more likely to find me, in a bar the night before a game, than practicing.
So Flintoff.
So I was, he had a lot more talent than me. So he could probably do it. So I couldn't do it. So I had the talent, and someone said that your mindset's poor. Stop it. And go and see someone who can sort your head out.
Yeah.
And it actually got me into psychology. So I saw a psychologist and liked psychology from then on. And so my interest has always been psychology. In regard to what I studied at college, I studied business and marketing. So that was, my first academic venture was business and marketing. But so I've got the commercial background and business knowledge then and interest. But it was psychology that I really wanted to follow. I sort of mixed the two together now. And
so Jamil, as a kid, what did he aspire to be? What did you want to be as a kid?
I don't know. It's never a guest speaker. I know that.
Oh, really?
Okay. So, speaking I do now, it's never that. I don't think I really did, to be honest.
Okay.
But, and it's really funny because some people want to be an astronaut or a train driver or go and work for RBS in accounts and compliance.
Do people want to do that?
I don't know. I just guess that. I guess that. But I don't think I really did. I think I was quite carefree. So I was quite, I was living for the moment lots. Fortunately, I did that until my mid-30s.
Okay.
So I was just,
amazing.
I was just doing. So I never really, and it's funny actually, I think that my parents and other people did put pressure on me because again, I was a bit like cricket. I was quite good at school. I was all right. And people were saying, look, you're good at school, try and ever think about what you want to do. But I didn't really. I was quite happy just living for my weekends and my days and things.
And your children, do they have any aspirations at their age now? How old are the twins?
Well, the twins, the 5-year-old girls,
Okay.
Lula and Dulcie, and Woody, who's 10.
Yeah.
But, so no, I don't think so. Lula says that she wants to be a policeman.
Oh, wow.
So I said, you can't be a policeman, you can be a policewoman, or a police person, you can do that. She said, no, I want to be a policeman.
Okay.
So I don't know what you do with that.
Nothing.
But no, leave it for the moment. But no, and I think that, for me, I don't think that I would stick to the rigidity of saying get yourself a career in a trade. I would say, be open-minded, be agile in your thinking, and deploy your resource to opportunity as you see fit. And I think that it's one of the things I think held me back was thinking I've got to be doing something.
Yeah.
I need a profession. My friends were going off and doing law and medicine and things, and I was playing some cricket and messing around, and I think I put undue pressure on myself, to think I need to be doing something sensible, when quite clearly I didn't need to be.
No, and I think that we all do that though, don't we? Or the majority of us, I think, put a lot of pressure on ourselves that we have to be doing certain things. And I don't know, maybe that's where we sort of all conform into what we should do in society, go to school, go to uni, get a good job, buy a house, get married.
Yeah, when you think about it, Tracy, it's true, isn't it? That, our father's fathers, whoever it was, 3 or 4 generations before, would have been educated in that area, they would have married in that area, would have been employed in that area. Whereas our children's children will go off and work in Australia. They will go and play the guitar for a living for a bit. And I think it's a world that we can't necessarily comprehend, and I think that, and so therefore there's no point in trying to define something, because as soon as you start to define something, you confine something.
Correct.
So I think as soon as we start to label in that way, professions, trades, careers, so I think express your talent. And some of the best people who I work with in business and sport get this exactly right, and they don't seek to impress, they seek to express. They're themselves in the context of their sport or the context of the work environment. And so if we can bring our full selves into whatever we're doing, I think we've got a chance of the world revealing itself to us, and us finding our own way as we go through life, being our best self.
Yeah, definitely. I was watching one of your TED Talks the other day, and you lead a few times actually with to act differently, you have to think differently.
Yes.
And can you just elaborate on that slightly?
Yes. Okay. So everyone's always trying to change actions. So we're constantly saying to ourselves, I need to drink less, or I need to I wasn't picking on you. But you do need to drink less.
Yes, yeah? I do.
I was trying to get it in some sort of way that you didn't realise, but you picked up on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're saying we need to drink less. I need to work out more, and I need to be more collaborative in the workplace. We do it all the time with our children. We do it all the time with the people we manage and lead. We tell them to be different. The reason why it doesn't work is that we're just trying to get people to commit to a different action.
Yeah.
So it's not commitment, it's compliance. And it's really hard to comply consistently. So I think if you want to change your behaviours, you need to change your thinking. So New Year's resolutions aren't about stopping things and starting things. They're about creating a new perspective on that gin and tonic. That's what it's about. So once we start to create new perspectives, then we create new feelings and therefore new actions. So some of the actions that will come about, the behaviours come about by feeling differently about something. Yeah. So, when you see someone on the telephone, for example, in the workplace, that's their action, that's the behaviour, them on a telephone. How they'll be behaving will be dependent upon how they feel about the call. But how they feel about the call comes from what they think about it. So you think, this is a tricky call with a customer, so I feel nervous and anxious. And so therefore the action is then translated. So there's no point in saying to yourself, I won't feel anxious, because that's really hard to do. But if we think about the call and say, it's a tricky call, but there is an opportunity in this, or it's a tricky call, and it's good that it is, because we need to air this particular issue. Whatever it is, if we can change the perception, change that thinking,
Yeah.
the words and pictures in our heads, we can change the feeling and change the action.
Okay.
It's more sustainable when it comes to change.
No, I think you're right. And I was talking to someone the other day. It was more of a public speaking thing. One of the, I suppose, the first courses that I'd been to, and she asked me to talk about myself, which I found really difficult. And I could go and present for the company I worked for forever and a day. And she said, "Why do you find it difficult?" And I said, at that time, you know, I just have this like nervous energy. And she just said, turn that into excitement, turn it into being. That, you know, this is a great opportunity, and actually just be excited about it. And yeah, I do. And now I'm like an overexcitable puppy all the time now. So.
And did it work for you?
It did, actually, yeah, it really did.
Yeah, there's a nice little technique I'll share with you that you have lots of people who are successful, and so they write lots of lists on what they're going to do today. And you have that all of lists on what they do today. Rarely does someone write a list on who they're going to be today. And it's a really nice little technique. If you write down your tasks, so your to-do list, I've got these 3 difficult customer calls, I've got a brainstorm with my team, I've got to do whatever. Put a personality type next to the task. So 3 difficult customer calls, and then I'll write optimistically next to it, or open-mindedly, whatever it might be.
I love that.
So brainstorm energetically or collaboratively, whatever it might be. Just choose one personality type. Don't write a list. It's one. And not only are you more likely to get the task done, some tasks we put off because you don't want to do them. You're more likely to get it done, but you're more likely to do it, the frame of mind or the characteristic being front of mind when you actually complete the task. So I've got these 3 calls to make. I'm going to make them open-mindedly. And that's the only thing you have to do. Guarantee you it's a completely different feeling and potentially a different action when you come to making the calls.
I'm going to test that.
Give it a go.
I'm going to test that, and I'm going to let you know.
I promise you it works.
I'm going to test that and let you know. So I did, I think failure is always one of these things and conversations that comes up all the time. I think it stops a lot of people from taking action to what they actually want to do. And I did a show the other day of how to fail and still become unstoppable. And that was with the CFO of Deliveroo, Amazon, and I had someone else on the show who owns an aviation company. All failed. One of them had actually spent time in prison, come out and is a very successful entrepreneur today. What advice would you give anyone that fears failure? And have you ever failed?
Oh God, I fail all the time. Yeah, absolutely. I was late for this.
Yeah, this is true. 10 minutes.
So yeah. So I think that reframing is really important. Okay. So failure is part payment towards success. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And the price of success is always paid in full and in advance.
Yes.
Sports people know this better than business people. So the price of success is always paid in full and in advance. So you don't get to number 1 in the world and then start making your mistakes. It doesn't work that way. So you can almost say to be more successful, you need to double your rate of failure. So because failure and success shouldn't be attitudes. They should be outcomes. That's what they are. Yeah. And they are both an equal opportunity for us to learn. Yeah. So what enables us to be our best long term is our ability to learn, not to succeed and fail. They're short-term outcomes. That's what they are. So for us to create a better perspective on what failure means to our long-term success is probably where it's at. Okay. And I think, you know, in companies at the moment, Tracy, it's increasingly important. So to create a culture which favours experimentation.
Yes.
And so we definitely need to reframe success and failure within organisations and see them much more, you know, not talk in terms of failure, but talk in terms of learning moments. So, and allow our teams and our team members the opportunity to fail. It doesn't make them a failure. Or to make a mistake, it doesn't make them a mistake. Yeah. And as soon as we start to detach the action from the person, we get our best learning opportunity. So it's the emotional connection, you know, which often, you know, allows people to feel bad about something not working out, rather than the assessing it evidentially to find out where the learning is.
And for someone that's lived in the corporate world for 20 years, working for, some certain companies. They don't, if you failed, they make sure you know you failed, and whatever
Yeah,
it is.
absolutely.
But if you hit your target, great,
Yeah.
you hit your target, we've made a load of money, but actually, even that in itself, for me, isn't success.
It's short
It's
term.
the elements that allowed us as a team to get there, for me, which is more success than the commission check at the end of it, to be honest.
Yes.
But it's not always articulated in that way from the top down. I don't think.
I agree. And you'll know from your corporate experience that there's a difference between failure because you haven't got the right aptitude or skill sets and honourable failure.
Yeah.
An honourable failure is,
Yeah.
I tried to make this happen, and I thought it was going to be tricky, but I gave it a go.
Yeah.
Or I just wanted to see whether, we could make this work. And there's a big difference, isn't there? But
Yeah,
you're
there
right.
is.
I think that in the corporate world, I think failure is seen as failure.
Yeah.
But there are gradations of failure, and particularly different intentions that are behind that particular outcome.
Yeah, for sure. So I suppose I was given a grant the other day. I was very lucky by the government as part of a Kickstart scheme where I could...
Does this mean like an invoice today?
No, where
okay.
I could employ someone from this scheme through the job centre. And I had an interview with 6 young people. They were started at age 18 up to 22. And I was distraught by the end of it.
Really?
Purely for the fact of low self-esteem, self-doubt. It was bad. What is the type of, I suppose, advice that you could give, I suppose, to that generation now, to, I suppose, show up differently? Me as an employer, I actually didn't really care what was on their CV as such. When I had a conversation with them, I wanted to understand their values. What were they about? What did they enjoy doing? If they had passion. And the conversation was lovely, and if I could have employed them all, I absolutely would have done, but I could only take one. I don't think other employers are like that. So I suppose this is 2 questions, really. First, what can they do when they show up potentially to an interview like they did with me to sort of get a better self-esteem? And what about employers? Can they start employing differently to how they do now?
Yes, okay, let's take the first bit. I think the problem we've got is that we always try to fix our weaknesses. So often when you say to someone, what would enable you to be better? They say, well, you know what, I need to work on that because I'm no good at it. Or there's a real gap in this area, so I need to improve that. Sometimes when you look at work on your weaknesses and you're talking about what you're not good at often, it just makes you feel bad.
Really does.
And then you feel even worse if you can't fix it or make it better. And there's some things that we can't. I am terribly organised. I will never be organised.
Yeah.
Now, I could try to be better organised and realise how bad I am at it, and probably not improve from where I am now, which will make me feel doubly bad.
Yeah.
Which will affect my self-esteem.
Sure.
How I perceive myself. So I think the way forward in regard to improving self-esteem, particularly when you're young, is to play to your strengths, is to understand what you're good at and almost take what you are good at and make it better, more so than try to fix what's bad about you.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you find what's good about you and share it, it multiplies, it gets bigger. Sometimes when you take what's bad about you and ignore it, it actually diminishes.
Yeah.
So we don't give it, any credence. I see people sometimes will say to me something like, I'm a procrastinator and I need to stop. So I really need to stop procrastinating. They find it gets worse. And the reason why it gets worse is they've now labelled themselves as it.
Yeah.
I'm a procrastinator. So they've actually saying it and so becoming it even more. So I think let's try and improve and be better by understanding our strengths and playing to them more. Much more celebration. And again, let's go back to the corporate world. How much do we celebrate our successes? We don't. It's a quick pat on the back and let's get on because it's exactly, it's next, isn't it? So and we do it as individuals all the time. We do something great and take it for granted. Let's move on to the next thing. So I think more time and more space to understand what's good about us. In regard to employers, I think you probably say the same. is that, let's have a look at things which are not binary. So we don't necessarily need to celebrate outcomes. We can start to celebrate some of the things which are based upon activity, character, what people are bringing into a team. So I talk a lot now to companies about the fact that we should not recruit for cultural fit, but recruit for cultural contribution. Yeah. And you get younger people into a team who can come in and be disruptive. So the immigrant will always see things that the citizen is blind to. Get some young people in to talk 100%. To talk about some stuff from their perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
So create a psychological safety and create a diversity in age, as we're talking about that now. And allow people to contribute. They feel they've got worth. We celebrate what's good about them and their contribution. They feel a level of equality because they're coming into an organisation, sitting in meetings and being asked to speak, and being asked to come up with ideas. So I think rather than looking to get young people in and train them, and then celebrate when they're successful, let's get young people in and look at their development as part of something which is ongoing in regard to making the organisation better anyway by cultural contribution. There's something which I talk about a bit at the moment, and particularly with teams who are working virtually. What tends to happen when you work on a Zoom call or a Teams call is that you just get on and do your half hour about what what you're talking about, the project or the numbers. And I'm trying to say to people, try and have more human conversations. So, and you'll see why I'm bringing this up now in relation to your question, that if you jump on a Zoom call but 6 of your teammates, don't just jump into what you've got to talk about on the agenda. Do a quick round robin and ask a question. And it's a human question. And it's a question like, what have you discovered this week? I've given this to so many companies this year. What have you discovered this week? And then you ask 6 people on a call. You'll be amazed what they come up with. Yeah. Someone will say something personal. Someone will say something business related. Someone will say something observational. Another good question is, what surprised you this week? What have you enjoyed this week? What have you learned this week? And by asking these, where are you experimenting? That's a great question, by the way. Where are you experimenting at the moment?
That's a great question.
Isn't it? And then people say something like, well, do you know what? I'm experimenting with getting the children to eat this food. Or someone else will say that, I'm experimenting by changing the selling cycle really completely. I'm actually texting my prospects at this stage, and they start talking about the sales cycle. So by asking some of these questions, which are non-binary, we get a better chance to explore and understand and contextualize our development and progress in the eyes of each other and in the and through the lens and perspective of the business. So if young people are coming in, and instead of just being trained, we're asking them questions like, where are you experimenting? What have you discovered? What surprised you this week? We're getting insight about our business and our teams and practices. But they're also starting to have a level of provocation and stimulation about the world that they are entering into. So, I think maybe that increases self-esteem too, because they're actively contributing, they're co-authoring and co-creating, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And what are your aspirations now?
For Lula to become a policeman. I just love to see it. My aspirations. God, I'm so bad at this. Honestly, if
you're not the only one. So I was talking to a veterinarian the other day. He's got his own practice in London, and it was the first time I'd met him actually. And I asked him this question, and he said, Tracy, I would love to do this and to do that, but I've got a family and I've got responsibility. Okay. But what you can always go back to that, and surely you can explore. And I'm trying to think of what I called it. I did write it down. Yeah, that almostpreneur. There's someone that has the network and the knowledge, and he found it really difficult to accept that he could still aspire to be, or aspire to change. And then I thought it might be a good question for you as well, actually, not of what do you aspire to be now, but why do people not take that jump into the unknown, because it can be a great place.
Yeah, I think, in regard to my aspirations, I just don't have any sort of plans or strategies. I just, I do what I do and see what happens. And I think it's been a real strength is to be sort of open-minded, because you get a chance to reimagine, repurpose, reinvent, in accordance to, the world.
Yeah.
So I got a sort of variety of business interests, which I like, and I like variety. So it's quite nice to be doing different stuff. Why people perhaps don't necessarily take a leap of faith or commit to something which is outside of their comfort, I think it's probably because you're not guaranteed success. So if you think about it, let's take moving your office at so moving your desk. So when we used to work in offices, one of the things that people wouldn't like to do is to move desks.
They hated
it.
So I remember in our sales office, they would hate it.
So before hot desking and before hybrid working, if you said to someone you need to move desk, it would just be, wouldn't it be the worst possible thing?
Honestly, and it's Angelo, my friend Angelo is watching. He was the one, I never forget, the CEO came in and said, well, Angelo, you need to move over to there. And Tracy, I didn't care where I was, it doesn't bother me. But it really messed with him.
Oh yeah, it's like saying you're going to have to be branded with the logo of the company, so on your left buttock. So it's just like so people wouldn't do it. But if you said to them, you're going to do it, and if you do it, at the end of the year, I'll give you £1 million, they would be trotting down the corridor with their potted plant in their hand. And the reason why is guaranteed success.
Yeah.
So people have to give up what is with the prospect of not knowing what will be. And I think that that's the tricky thing. And this is why I always say that redundancy is a great enabler.
Yes.
I remember someone who was working in IT and he was earning like 70 grand a year. He said to me, do you know what, if I went freelance on my own, I'd earn 200 grand a year. I said, why don't you? And he said, I've got mortgage, I've got kids. It's just easy for you to say. He said, but I'm not going to do it. Then he was made redundant and then within the year was making 200, 300 grand a year. So I think that, we have comfort, we have opportunity, and we have risk. And for us to move outside of comfort and into that space of opportunity is a really interesting space to be in, but we need to almost determine what that looks like. And for some people, it's not, selling the house and putting it all into the coffee shop that you've always wanted to run. But it might be, it might be, again, a gradation of that, which allows people to understand, that I have got some entrepreneurial flair, or I have got some talent in this area. And I tell you what the interesting thing is now, is that with anything like Etsy, to Amazon, and eBay, and all these things, that there's an opportunity for people to test. So if you do have a business idea, there may be platforms or channels or ways of working which might allow you to explore the idea from a perspective that you hadn't first thought. And it's one of the beauties of the internet, for example, is that you can test cheaply. And so when Airbnb and Uber, all these things start, they test cheaply. You don't need to buy offices, you don't need to buy stock. What you do is you put something out there and see what happens. And then you deploy your resource to opportunity as it unfolds, seeing that there's a market. So maybe in an age where I honestly believe what we can imagine, we can achieve, if we can imagine that there's a business in this somewhere, somehow, then there might be some of the foundations or platforms or networks which allow us to make it happen, which are outside of our current thinking.
I love that. Talking of success. So, and actually, going back to strengths, about 6 months ago, I did a test. It's called Clifton Strengths. I don't know if you've heard of it before.
I think I've heard of it, yes.
Yeah, so you take this exam and it's like within 20 minutes, you just have to, whatever comes into your head, you need to answer within like a couple of seconds. God, It's exciting. But what it allows you to do though is realise what your strengths are. So like for me, for example, I've always thought years ahead of what could be, and Deliveroo was something I was thinking of, back when Will Shoe was. Actually, within
Right.
2 days of us having the same thought, and I went to work for Deliveroo, so I sort of know this. The decision was he did it though, and he got on his bike and started biking around Chelsea to deliver things, so he knew the model could work.
Yeah.
I didn't. I went on to do something else and listened to other people saying, Tracy, it will never work.
Yes.
You know, don't do it. But so I understood, so the first strength that came up to me was futuristic. So I was like, okay, now I get it. Now I get why my mind is the way it is. And there was self-assurance and other ones, but the top 5 were, then I realised, okay, now I can accept who I am in a way. I don't think at any point in my life before that, I or anyone else had tried to understand or articulate what my strengths were. It was always, what can't you do? Okay,
Yes,
you know you
yeah.
can do that, and you know what can't you do?
Appraisals.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what you do wrong.
Oh, the amount of time Excel would come up for me. Tracy's calculation was shocking. Like, come on. I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're
incredible,
kidding
isn't
me. But yeah, just pick up on things like that. But yeah, I think understanding our strengths is key. But I was asked a question and they said to me, so Tracy, you are competitive. It's one of your top 5. When you know where you want to get to with this next step and you're there, what's next? And I was like, you know, good question, actually. I'm not sure. If I get to that point, I'll be very happy and content to a certain extent, but I suppose you always have to push yourself. So how do you define success and what does that look like?
It's a big one, isn't it? So, yeah, so I always think that success is the continued accomplishment of goals,
Okay.
which are personal to the individual.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's continued is because, you know, you don't stop success. You know, we should continue it. Better never stops. You know, we should always be looking to improve and achieve. So it's a continued accomplishment, and then it's goals which are personal to the individual. Because one of the mistakes that people make with success is they do it as a comparison. So they'll compare themselves to someone they went to school with, or they compare themselves to someone who is in the sales team. You know, compare themselves to their next door neighbour, which I can't do. My next door neighbour is phenomenally successful. I can't do that. So this is what proves it's rubbish.
Yeah.
So it's always about our own potential. That's what it's about. It's always about making sure that we are fulfilling our own capability. So, and that's why it's important to understand our strengths. So once we start to understand our strengths, you know, we get a better perspective on how we may wish to use them.
Yeah.
You know, and a little bit like that magnifying glass which takes the sun, you know, when you get that focus right, you know, it's a really intense heat. So, you know, let's try and be more intense in the way in which we understand our strengths and play to them.
Yeah.
And I'll give you, I don't want to talk sport, but
No, please.
you know, but
I like sports.
But yeah,
It's
but
okay
it's
for me.
there was a guy who played cricket for Australia, very successful, and you know, great international career. But many professionals would say he had 3 shots and only 3 shots. And, so he played 3 shots. Not a very particularly versatile player. You know, he would play these 3 shots, but he'd play them better than anyone else. So his focus, you know, the shots he couldn't play, he didn't play. So, you know, he couldn't play it, they're a weakness, so he left them alone. But, you know, he would play those 3 shots better than anyone else. You know, I worked with golfers before, you know, who have had one strength. And as soon as they've moved into a space where they thought, you know what, I need to improve my weaknesses, they almost found out that, you know, they lost the strength.
Yeah.
So, because they're focusing too much time, commitment, energy on areas that they couldn't improve anyway.
Yeah.
And so then they fell by the wayside. Rather than saying, I'm good at these 1 or 2 things, and I'm just going to spend all my time on them. And so I've actually worked with teams before and individuals who have weakened a strength by trying to strengthen a weakness. You know, which makes you.
I'm that person. It happened to me.
Which makes you perform even worse. Yeah. So, a couple of things in regard to your question: what is success? So if success is a continued accomplishment of goals, we need to be open-minded in regard to our thinking about what those goals could be. They're personal to us, so we focus upon our strengths. Focus upon our strengths, we have more confidence and belief because we feel good about ourselves, and that's what we're doing. And yeah, we narrow our focus in regard to our intention, which allows us to become more purposeful. So when we're more purposeful, we have more of an energy and enthusiasm behind what we're trying to achieve.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that, and I think it's a really important thing. People talk about finding your purpose. I just think it's such a hard thing to do.
Yeah,
it's such a hard thing to do. I don't think people do unless they just go and find it. I think what you do is you get, you understand your strengths and put them out into the world. And as I say, I think the world always rewards you.
See what comes
the
back.
world,
Right?
the world rewards you for being you.
Yeah.
For me, I worked in the corporate world for a while.
Did you?
And yeah. Well, I've been sacked from every single job I've ever done.
Have you really?
Yeah, 100%
That's
success
brilliant.
rate. So
100%
yeah,
success.
100%. Every single job I've done, I was sacked from. But the reason why I was sacked was because there's certain things in the office environment that I couldn't do.
Like timekeeping.
Organisation, timekeeping. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
sure.
I used to enjoy sales. I used to enjoy business development, customer relationships, loved it. Ideation.
Yeah.
Anything to do with like thinking innovatively about strategy and plans, loved it. But you asked me to put in my expense form, I won't do it. So in these places where I was sacked, what could have happened was that they could have got someone in on £12,000 a year to go into my glove compartment and take out my expenses. But instead, and they said to me, "Look, Jamil, you're great at selling, you're good at client relationships, you're good at strategy. You just go and do that. Just do that." And I'm sure that I would have had a pretty successful career in that organisation.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen. But now I'm more me than I ever have been.
Okay.
And I've got to admit that things are going quite well. Entrepreneurially, business-wise, is all right. Because I genuinely feel as though I didn't make a decision to do anything I'm doing now. I never went to college to become a guest speaker.
Yeah.
I just started being me, and people then came to me and said, "Can you come and do a talk for us?" And I think that everything that I've sort of involved in now, sort of business ventures and everything else I do, has all just come about, and it seems to be stuff that you've just sort of fallen into. So
it's amazing how things happen.
Yeah, it is. So
when you really start understanding who you are, but just being you.
Just being you, yeah. And then you become more purposeful because you start to make connections which weren't connected before.
Yes.
And they have more meaning to you. So as soon as we start to sort of chase our passion more than our pension,
yes.
And we get involved with people that we want to engage with. We're involved in things that we want to do, and as soon as we start to do that, I think that the rewards sort of end up being there anyway by default.
Doors just open. I mean, for me, it's been an amazing journey so far. Someone asked me to ask you this question, and it's a really good question actually.
Oh, yeah.
What's one
Is this
of
from HMRC?
No, it's not yet.
Okay, right.
You're doing your tax return,
Right,
Jamil. You're late.
Mm.
What is one of the most significant transformations that you've ever seen in your career?
That's a good question, isn't it? That's a great question. I've seen. Do you know what? Here's the thing. I've seen some golfers, in particular, and I don't know why. I think this. You've caught me out on the question. This is off the top of my head.
Good.
But I've seen some golfers who were, literally not at the races.
Yeah.
They were very, very average, and they're very average not because of their technical ability, because of their thinking. And they would be run of the mill, journeyman, and they'll be turning up and being okay. And then I've gone to Ryder Cup players, top 10 in the world. Wow. And would I have put money on it? No, absolutely not. But I find that the difference between winners and losers in sport is often what goes on behind the eyes. So it almost proves that there's lots of people with talent, but talent is not enough. So it's the ability to create a perspective which allows us to use our talent in a way that we weren't currently using it, that enables us to perform. So I don't think that these golfers who I'm thinking about, and I won't name them, but the golfers who I'm thinking about, who when I saw them, I was even asked to work with a couple of them, I thought, there's no point really. He's not,
You'd already given up.
He's not he's not that good, and
Yeah.
and he's not interested. And then literally within 3-4 years, they're playing in the Ryder Cup, they're playing in the US Open, playing in the Masters, and I think that sometimes talent shouts really loudly. You see people and you think, wow, they're good, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I do think that there's some people who have got this within them, got it inside them, and when the time and the lights are right, it just happens.
Yeah.
And for some reason, whether they deliberately choose it or whether something is thrust upon them, situation or context, they decide to perform. So, and I'll give you an example, a personal example is that, my mother died in 2003. And in 2003, I literally up until 2003, I did nothing. I was bumming around, not doing anything.
Yeah.
And it's only when my mum died, I thought, do you know what? People die. And it's this really strange realization that had this fragility in our own mortality that, that hang on a minute, that, people die, life ends. And it was a really weird realization. Yeah. And I thought I need to do something. And what that meant was at the time and the lights were right for me to then think, what do I enjoy? I enjoy psychology. Okay, well, let me go and do some psychology. Yeah. And that's how I sort of made that transition into psychology. Okay. Was, a circumstance which thought, I need to move out of where I currently am. And I think that this is why, for all the best advice in the world, and you'll know it as a mother, that all the best advice in the world, and I was given some great advice, some brilliant advice. You don't take it because life is about timing, isn't it? And yes. I think for some of these golfers who made the transition, I think for some people who start businesses in their 60s, life is about timing. And for whatever people say, sometimes there's got to be a context or an environmental factor or a realization in some way which allows you to use the same talent you got in a different way that enables you to have great results.
Yeah, 100%.
I hope that makes sense.
It really
a bit garbled, does. I feel.
Not at all. No, not at all. Not at all.
It sounds quite fatalistic, but it's not. I just think that some of the most interesting people I've ever met, have been people who have given up their careers at age 60 to go and start a business doing something,
Well, not age 60, but
But yeah, but you know what I mean? They really, there's also this, done something, just done something which you wouldn't expect them to
Honestly,
do, and
people said to me when I left my job, oh God, Tracy's having a nervous breakdown. Oh no, or she's having a midlife crisis. None of those. No. Actually, it was just at that time in my life, I woke up.
It's waking up.
And I just woke up. And I think when you're constricted, I felt very constricted in my corporate career. I wanted to do things that's not the way, that's not how we run as a company. Okay. And I was just, I suppose I was done with conforming in a way. So I wanted to go and do something different. And I think that's what I'd always instill into my daughter as well. And if I'm not going to go and live my dreams, then that's going to teach you shouldn't. And absolutely you should. I always want her to go and do whatever she wants to do in life. And think she can be anything she wants.
Yes. Yes. Do you know, there's this great story, I'll tell you very quickly, that it's called Acres of Diamonds. And it's based at the time of the diamond rush in southern Africa. So people pulling diamonds out the ground, 100 years ago. And there's a farmer who owned a farm which was non-arable, not growing crops, and so sold everything, sold the farm to buy all the equipment to go looking for diamonds. And so he then dies penniless. Actually, a true story. Penniless, and I think he drowned in a river, if I remember right. And the people who bought the land started to cultivate the land and found acres of diamonds. And obviously, the moral of the story is that we already have enough to allow us to be more successful. Success is under our own feet. So, would you say that would I say that I have more skills than what I had 20 years ago? I don't think I really have, to be honest. Would I say I've discovered those skills or understood them better? Probably. And I think there's people in business now if you work in a bank or if you work in a utility, whatever it might be, there's people in business now who could be substantially better, and not substantially better by learning new technology, not by learning a new language or going back to school. I reckon they could be better simply by seeing themselves differently, simply by seeing their colleagues differently, simply by seeing collaboration differently, whatever it might be. So it's just a new perspective. Doesn't give us new skills, but it allows us to use the skills we've already got in a different way to what we're currently using them. So that, to me, is improvement.
Yeah, it is. One last question.
Okay.
If you could change one thing personally and professionally, what would it be?
Oh, personally, do you mean about me? Or
Well, I mean, she asked the question. This question isn't from me. This is from someone that...
Oh, is it? Okay, if I could change one thing personally, I'd be easier to work with.
Okay.
I think that I do a bit of this and a bit of that. I plate spin.
Okay.
So I think I'm quite tricky to work with.
Yeah.
I'm not organised. I'm into this and then into that. So actually, I'm being really nice actually there, Tracy, because what I'm saying is that the people around me and all these wonderful people who make it all happen, that I wish I could give them an easier life. So I'm actually being really nice there, Tracy. And professionally, I don't really understand what you mean professionally. Maybe think that I think
maybe it's professionally or in others. If you could change one thing in others, what would that be?
Professionally, I would have organisations become more. If I was thinking about organisations and corporates, become more sustainably successful by seeing themselves not as organisations with targets, but as communities with a purpose. And I think we need to redefine business completely.
Yes.
So I could talk for a long time about this one, but businesses and the rigidity in structures, hierarchies and bureaucracies don't maximise human potential. So communities outperform bureaucracy and hierarchy when it comes to maximising human capability. And I think you need to reorganise business, reimagine, repurpose to allow us to create something which is sustainably successful and more robust than what we created before in regard to economies, governance, markets. If I could have one more change, I'd change this government.
Yes.
That's what I would do. I would change this government. And do you know what? I would do that over becoming more organised and easy to work with. In fact, you know what? I'd be even more horrible to work with. If someone could change the government, I'd be absolutely awful to every single person I work with.
You heard it here. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you,
and
Tracy.
Actually, I do have one more question. You talk a lot in the week and virtually in person. How do you look after your voice?
Do you know what? That's a brilliant question. And I don't know the answer to it, but I'm really open to suggestion.
Yeah.
Honestly, do you know, it's a really good question because I lose my voice all the time.
So
I'll probably speak, at the moment, it's about 12 times a week. So doing a talk for an hour at 12 times a week. And so I lose my voice, and usually lose my voice, believe it or not, at the end of October, beginning of November. Okay. I promise you. So last 2 weeks of October, first 2 weeks of November, I will lose my voice. And it happens a couple of times during the year. And it's a really weird thing because it's not sore or, I'm not ill. It's a bit of a whisper, it's like that.
Yeah.
And it's horrible when it goes. It really is awful.
Yeah,
I nearly went the other day, actually. I was doing a talk for, can't remember who, for HPE, and it actually went mid-talk. So I don't look after it.
Okay.
And my good friend Maria, she always says you need to get a voice coach and you need to look after your voice. And I go, yeah, I will. And then I don't.
Yeah, it's true because you have a strong voice. For me, I used to sing many moons ago.
Did you?
And I'd be in the studio for like 48 hours, sometimes 4 days, and my throat would just, it got to the point, then there was brandy and honey and everything, and then I just couldn't send body.
We've wasted time here talking. You could have sung us a tune. I don't know why we didn't bother doing the talking. We've got a table for you to stand on and everything.
But I did wonder, I wonder how he's looking after his voice.
No, but as a singer, maybe you can advise
Okay.
me, because I definitely do need to do something.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you so much for joining
you.
today. Thank you.